Hey guys, tonight we slip into the shimmering heat of ancient Persia, where the sun scorches the desert sands and the air hums with the promise of something cool, something sweet. Picture yourself standing at the base of a jagged mountain, its peak dusted with snow that glints like a mirage. You're squinting up, wondering how anyone could turn that distant frost into a dessert so divine it made kings sigh. That's right. We're diving into how the Persians used mountain snow to craft fruit sorbet, a treat so luxurious you'd probably melt faster than it would in the desert sun. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love picturing where you're all drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging up a rocky trail in the Alborz Mountains, north of modern-day Tehran, around 500 BCE. The air is crisp, and your sandals kick up dust that smells faintly of sage. Below, the desert stretches endlessly, a sea of gold under a relentless sun. Up here, though, patches of snow cling to shaded crags, defying the heat. These snowy pockets were the Persians' secret weapon, the starting point for a dessert that would make your modern ice cream cone feel like a cheap knockoff. The Achaemenid Persians, rulers of an empire sprawling from Egypt to India, didn't just stumble upon this idea. They were obsessive about mastering nature, and turning snow into sorbet was their culinary flex. Your guide, a wiry mountaineer named Arash, points to a snowfield nestled in a crevice. He's got a grin that says he knows something you don't. This, he says, scooping a handful of glittering snow, is worth more than gold to the king's table. You raise an eyebrow, because snow's just frozen water, right? Wrong. To the Persians, snow was a rare commodity, a gift from the heavens that could be transformed into a chilled delicacy. Arash explains that teams of harvesters, often local tribesmen, would scale these peaks at dawn, when the snow was still firm. They'd pack it into straw-lined baskets, wrapping them in hides to slow the melt. The goal? Get it down the mountain before it turned to slush. Here's the mainstream fact. The Achaemenid Empire's postal system, with its relay stations called shaparkhane, doubled as a snow delivery network. Couriers on horseback would race snow from the mountains to royal cities like Persepolis, sometimes covering 500 miles in days. It was like ancient Uber Eats, but for ice. The quirky tidbit? Some harvesters believed the snow from the tallest peaks was blessed by Ahura Mazda, the Zoroastrian god, and would only collect it after offering a prayer. Historians still argue whether this was a religious ritual or just a way to hype up their product to picky palace chefs. You're sweating now, watching Arash and his crew hack at the snow with bronze tools. They move fast, their breath puffing in the chilly air. You can't help but chuckle imagine risking your neck for a dessert ingredient. Ever slip, you ask? Arash laughs. Only once. The snow survived. My pride didn't. The baskets are loaded onto mules, and you join the descent, the path steep enough to make your knees wobble. The snow's already dripping, staining the straw, and you realize this is a race against time. Down in the valley, a royal courier waits, his horse snorting impatiently. If this snow makes it to the king's kitchen, it'll be churned into something magical. If not, well, someone's getting a stern talking to. As you stumble along, you notice the landscape shifting scrubby bushes give way to orchards heavy with pomegranates and figs. The Persians didn't just eat snow, they mixed it with fruit juices and honey, creating a proto-sorbet that was half dessert, half status symbol. You're starting to get why this was a big deal. In a land where summer could hit 120 Fahrenheit, a chilled treat wasn't just refreshing, it was a miracle. You glance back at the mountain, its peak fading into the haze. Arash catches your look and winks. "Next time, bring a spoon," he says. You laugh, but your mouth's watering already. The trail narrows, and you're dodging loose rocks while the mules plod ahead, their bells jingling softly. You're struck by the sheer effort of this operation. These harvesters weren't just gathering snow, they were defying geography. The Albor's range was no joke, with slopes that could send you tumbling and winds that stung like a slap. Yet they climbed daily, driven by the promise of royal coin, or maybe just pride in their craft. You try to imagine explaining this to your friends back home. "Yeah, I watched guys haul snow for dessert." They'd think you'd lost it. Arash pauses to adjust a basket, and you catch your breath. The air smells of pine and something earthy, like wet stone. You ask how they decide which snow to take. He shrugs. "The cleanest, the whitest, no dirt, no animal tracks." You nod, but you're secretly wondering if they ever snuck a taste. Like, did some kid on the crew ever lick the snow and get caught? You picture a grumpy overseer barking, "That's the king's sorbet, not your snack." It's a silly thought, but it makes you grin. As you near the valley, the heat creeps back, wrapping around you like a heavy cloak. The mules pick up pace, sensing the end of the trek. You're starting to feel the weight of the journey, your calves burning, your throat dry. But there's something oddly soothing about this rhythm, the crunch of gravel, the creak of baskets, the distant call of a hawk. It's the kind of monotony that could lull you to sleep, which, let's be honest, is kind of the point here. You're not just learning about sorbet, you're sinking into a world where every step, every snowflake, was part of a grand, delicious plan. You're standing in the sweltering outskirts of Persepolis, the grand capital of the Achaemenid Empire, around 500 BCE. The sun's beating down, turning the air into a shimmering haze, and you're wiping sweat from your brow, wondering how anyone survives this heat. In the distance, a low, dome-shaped structure catches your eye, half buried in the earth like some ancient bunker. This, you're told, is a Yakchal Persia's ingenious ice storage house, where the snow you saw harvested in the mountains is transformed into the key ingredient for fruit sorbet. You're itching to get closer, because out here, the idea of anything staying frozen feels like pure magic. You follow a worker, a grizzled man named Kaveh, toward the Yakchal, his tunic stained with dust, and he's muttering about the heat like it's his personal enemy. "Snow's no good if it melts," he grumbles, pointing to the structure. You nod, but you're distracted by the Yakchal's odd design-thick mud brick walls, a conical roof, and a deep pit inside that smells faintly of straw and cold stone. These buildings were Persia's answer to the desert's brutality, engineered to keep snow and ice intact for months, even when the ground outside could fry an egg. You're half tempted to climb inside just to cool off, but Kaveh's giving you a look like you'd ruin his day. The mainstream fact here is that Yakchals were architectural marvels, some standing over 60 feet tall, with walls up to 6 feet thick to insulate against the heat. They used a combination of shade, evaporation, and underground storage to maintain sub-zero temperatures. The quirky tidbit: some Yakchals had wind-catching towers, like early air conditioners, that funneled breezes to chill the interior. Imagine a giant stone fridge powered by the breeze. Historians still argue whether the Persians invented this tech or borrowed it from earlier Mesopotamian designs, but either way, it was a game changer for keeping snow ready for sorbet. You step closer, peering into the pit where workers are unloading baskets of snow from the mountain trek you witnessed. The snow's compacted now, mixed with straw to slow melting, and it's being layered into the yakchal's base like a giant snowball. You're struck by the precision every move is calculated, every basket placed just so. Cavey explains that the snow's packed tight to form ice blocks, which are then covered with more straw and sealed with mud. Keeps it cold till summer, he says, and you whistle softly, because summer's months away. You're starting to see why sorbet was a royal treat. This is way more effort than grabbing a popsicle from the freezer. The air around the yakchal feels cooler, or maybe that's just your imagination. You notice a shallow trench circling the structure, filled with water that glints in the sun. Cavey says it's for evaporative cooling water, seeps into the walls, evaporates, and pulls heat away. You're like, okay, that's low-key brilliant. You can't help but joke. So, no one's ever fallen into that trench while hauling snow, Cavey snorts. Not sober, they haven't. You laugh, picturing a clumsy apprentice splashing into the moat and blaming the heat. As you watch, a new load of snow arrives, carried by mules, whose hooves kick up clouds of dust. The workers move fast, shouting to each other in a mix of Persian and local dialects. You're catching the rhythm of this, place the clink of tools, the creak of baskets, the occasional bray of a mule. It's oddly soothing, like the hum of a fan back in your bedroom. You're starting to get why this story's perfect for drifting off. It's all about slow, deliberate work in a world that feels both alien and familiar. Cavey leads you to a smaller yakchal nearby, reserved for the king's personal stash. You peek inside, and the cold air hits you like a sleep refreshing, but also a reminder of how rare this was. The walls are slick with condensation, and the ice blocks glow faintly in the dim light. You ask if they ever sneak a chunk for themselves. Cavey smirks. Once. Got lashes. Worth it. You grin, imagining him crunching on stolen ice like it's candy. It's a small rebellion, but it makes you like him more. You step back outside, the heat wrapping around you again like an old friend you didn't shake. The yakchal looms behind you, a testament to Persian ingenuity. You're starting to piece together how they pulled this off snow from the peaks, stored in these stone giants, all for a dessert that most people could only dream of. But you're not done yet. You're wondering what they did with this ice next, how it became the sorbet that had your mouth watering back on the mountain trail. You glance at Cavey, who's already trudging back to work. So, where's the fruit come in? You ask. He waves a hand toward the city. Palace kitchens. That's where the real magic happens. You nod, your mind already drifting to the next step. The yakchal's shadow stretches long across the sand, and you feel a strange calm settling over you. This isn't just about sorbet, it's about a people who looked at a desert and said, "We'll make it snow." You take one last look at the dome, its curves soft against the harsh sky, and let the thought settle. It's the kind of thing that sticks with you, lulling you deeper into this ancient, sunlit world. You're strolling through a bustling orchard on the outskirts of Persepolis, the air thick with the scent of ripe fruit and sun-warmed earth. It's 500 BCE, and the desert heat presses against your skin, but the shade of pomegranate trees offers a fleeting reprieve. You're here to uncover the next piece of the sorbet puzzle, the fruits that gave this frozen Persian treat its soul. Your guide, a cheerful orchard keeper named Shirin, is plucking a fig from a low branch, her fingers sticky with juice. She offers you one, and you bite into it, the sweet burst making you forget the heat for a second. These, she says, are what make the snow sing. You're starting to get why sorbet wasn't just a dessert, it was practically poetry. The trees around you are heavy with pomegranates, figs, grapes, and quinces, their colors vivid against the dusty green leaves. Shirin explains that the Persians were fruit fanatics, cultivating orchards across their empire to feed royal tables. These weren't just any fruits. They were carefully bred for maximum flavor, grown in irrigated gardens that defied the arid landscape. You're walking through rows of trees, your sandals sinking into soft soil, and you can't help but marvel at the engineering. Canals snake through the orchard, carrying water from distant rivers, a lifeline in this sun-scorched land. You're thinking, this is like ancient hydroponics, and Shirin laughs when you say it out loud. Hydro? What? She teases. Just call it hard work. Here's the mainstream fact. Persian orchards were part of the empire's paradise gardens that inspired the modern word paradise. These weren't just for show. They supplied the fruits that defined sorbet's flavor profile. The quirky tidbit? Some orchard keepers swore by singing to the trees to make the fruit sweeter, a practice that sounds like it belongs in a fairy tale but was noted in ancient texts. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or an early grasp of how sound vibrations might affect plant growth. You're side-eyeing Shirin, wondering if she's about to break into song. She catches your look and grins. "Don't tempt me," she says, tossing you another fig. You're following her to a cluster of pomegranate trees, their ruby-red fruits glowing like jewels. Shirin explains that pomegranates were the star of sorbet, their tart juice mixed with snow to create a vibrant, ruby-hued treat. You're imagining it noisy, tangy, with a sweetness that hits just right. Grapes came next, crushed into a syrupy concentrate called dushab that added depth to the mix. Quinces, with their floral bite, were a royal favorite, though you're not sure you'd recognize one if it fell on your head. Shirin hands you a quince, and it's hard as a rock. "Boil it, sweeten it, then it's gold," she says. You nod, but you're privately thinking it looks like a reject apple. The process, Shirin tells you, starts with workers harvesting fruit at its peak, just before the sun gets too cruel. They'd carry baskets to the palace kitchens, where the fruit was pressed into juice or cooked into thick syrups. You're picturing a chaotic kitchen, scene cooks shouting, juice staining tunics, maybe someone slipping on a stray grape. You ask Shirin if accidents ever happened. "Oh, sure," she laughs. "Last week, a kid dropped a whole basket of pomegranates. Looked like a murder scene." You snort, because the image is both grim and hilarious, and you can't help but like her blunt humor. As you walk, you notice workers tending the canals, their shovels glinting in the sun. The water's flow is hypnotic, a soft gurgle that blends with the rustle of leaves. It's the kind of sound that could lull you to sleep, and you're starting to feel that familiar heaviness in your limbs. The orchard feels alive, buzzing with bees and the chatter of workers, but there's a rhythm to it, a slow pulse that matches your breathing. You're sinking deeper into this world, where every fruit was a step towards something extraordinary. Shirin leads you to a grapevine, its clusters heavy and dark. She explains that the juice was sometimes fermented slightly before being mixed with snow, giving the sorbet a faint, wine-like kick. You raise an eyebrow. Boozy sorbet? That's a party trick you didn't expect from ancient Persia. She smirks, reading your mind. Kings liked a little fun, she says. You're grinning now, imagining a royal banquet where everyone's tipsy on dessert. It's a silly thought, but it fits the vibe of luxury with a touch of mischief. You pause by a quince tree, its branches sagging under the weight of fruit. Shirin tells you the cooks would blend these juices with honey or date syrup, balancing tart and sweet to please picky palates. The snow from the Yakchal, remember that dome from the desert? Was the final touch, churned with the juice in wide bronze bowls. You're starting to see the whole picture: snow from the mountains, fruit from these orchards, and a whole lot of ingenuity. It's not just a dessert, it's a triumph over nature. The sun's dipping lower now, painting the orchard in gold. You're feeling the heat less, maybe because you're lost in the story. Shirin tosses you a grape, and you catch it, popping it into your mouth. It's sweet, warm, and bursting with flavor. You're thinking about that sorbet again, how it must have felt to taste it in a world without freezers or corner stores. It's a small miracle, and you're ready to follow the trail to the palace kitchens, where this fruit and snow become something legendary. You're stepping into the heart of Persepolis, the Achaemenid capital, where the air hums with the clatter of bronze pots and the scent of roasting spices. It's 500 BCE, and you're in the royal kitchens, a sprawling maze of fire pits, clay ovens, and workers darting about like bees in a hive. The heat's intense, but there's a corner where something cooler is happening now. From the Yakchal is being transformed into fruit sorbet, and you're here to see how it's done. The head cook, a stern woman named Roxana with flour-dusted hands, gives you a quick glance. Don't touch anything, she warns, but her eyes crinkle with a hint of mischief. You nod, already distracted by the sight of a gleaming snowblock being shaved into a wide bowl. The kitchen's alive with chaos, but the sorbet station is a pocket of calm. Workers move deliberately, their hands steady as they drizzle pomegranate juice over the snow. You're close enough to feel the chill rising from the bowl, a stark contrast to the sweat trickling down your back. The snow, remember that hard-won haul from the Alborz Mountains? Is the star here, but it's the fruit that steals the show. Roxana points to a row of jars filled with syrups, deep red pomegranate, amber quince, and dark grape dushab. It's all about balance, she says, pouring a careful measure of honey into the mix. You're mesmerized by the way the snow turns ruby, red as it melts into the juice, forming a slushy, fragrant concoction. Here's the mainstream fact. Persian royal kitchens were culinary powerhouses, staffed by hundreds to feed the king, his court, and visiting dignitaries, with recipes recorded on clay tablets for consistency. The quirky tidbit? Some cooks added rosewater or saffron to sorbet, not just for flavor, but because they believed it soothed the soul, an early stab at aromatherapy. Historians still argue whether these additions were purely for taste or tied to Zoroastrian beliefs about purity and balance. You're sniffing the air now, catching a faint floral note, and you're half convinced Roxana's slipped some rosewater in just to mess with you. You watch as a young apprentice, barely a teenager, stirs the sorbet with a wooden paddle. His hands are clumsy, and Roxana snaps, "Slower, or you'll bruise the snow." You stifle a laugh. Bruising snow sounds like something your mum would yell about a delicate salad. The kid blushes but keeps at it, blending the snow with syrup until it's a perfect icy slush. You're tempted to ask for a taste, but Roxana's glare says that's a bad idea. Instead, You lean closer, watching the mixture take on a glossy sheen. It's not just food, it's a performance, every step choreographed to impress. The process is simple but precise. The snow's shaved thin to melt evenly, mixed with fruit syrup in small batches to keep it cold. You notice workers rushing fresh snow from the yakchal every few minutes, because timing's everything. If the snow melts too fast, you're left with a sad, watery soup. You're starting to appreciate the skill involved, the way these cooks turn a pile of ice and juice into something fit for a king. You ask Roxana how they know when it's perfect. She shrugs. You feel it in your bones. You roll your eyes, but her confidence is kind of charming. The kitchen's noise fades into a soothing hum, clinking spoons, crackling fires, the soft scrape of snow against bronze. It's the kind of rhythm that could lull you to sleep, and you're feeling that familiar heaviness in your eyelids. You're imagining the sorbet's taste, now tart, sweet, with a floral kick that lingers. Roxana catches you daydreaming and tosses you a quince from a nearby basket. Peel it if you're just standing there, she says. You fumble the fruit, grinning at your own clumsiness. I'm better at eating than peeling, you joke. And she snorts, clearly unimpressed. You glance at the sorbet again, now being scooped into delicate clay cups for the king's banquet. The cups are etched with lions and lotus flowers, a reminder that this isn't just dessert, it's a status symbol. Only the elite get to taste this, while regular folks are lucky to chew on a sun-warmed fig. You're starting to get why sorbet was such a flex. In a desert empire, serving a chilled treat was like showing off a private glacier. You ask Roxana if she ever gets to try it. Once, she says, smirking. Spilled some. Licked the bowl. Don't tell. You laugh, promising to keep her secret. As you linger, you notice a courier dashing in with another basket of snow, his face flushed from the ride. The kitchen never stops, a constant dance of heat and cold, fruit and frost. You're sinking deeper into the scene, the smells and sounds wrapping around you like a blanket. The sorbet's almost ready now, its surface glistening in the firelight. You're itching to follow it to the banquet hall, to see how it's received. But for now, you're content to watch Roxana's team work their magic. The desert's still out there, baking the world, but in here, it's all cool breezes and sweet promises. You're weaving through a dusty caravan trail just outside Persepolis, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the sand. It's 500 BCE, and you're tailing a group of traders, their camels laden with good silk, spices, and, yes, the ingredients for that fruit sorbet you've been drooling over. The air smells of leather and camel sweat, but there's a faint sweetness too, from the jars of fruit syrup tucked into woven baskets. You're here to see how sorbet, born in Persia's royal kitchens, spread beyond the palace walls, carried along trade routes to distant lands. Your guide, a chatty merchant named Bahram, adjusts his turban and winks. Snow and fruit, he says. They travel farther than kings. You're not sure if he's profound or just tired, but you're hooked. The trail stretches towards Susa, a bustling hub where traders from India, Egypt, and Greece swap goods and stories. Bahram explains that sorbet's recipes now, fruit juice, honey, wasn't just a dessert. It was a trade secret, shared like gossip among merchants. You're picturing it now. A caravan stops at an oasis, and some trader brags about the king's frozen treat, maybe trading a recipe for a bolt of silk. You're walking beside a camel, its bells jingling softly, and the rhythm so soothing you're half asleep on your feet. You catch yourself swaying and joke, "These camels are better at lulling me than my old white noise app." Bahram chuckles. Wait till you hear them snore. Here's the mainstream fact. The Persian Royal Road, stretching 1,700 miles from Susa to Sardis, was the empire's trade superhighway, with relay stations every 15 miles to speed goods like fruit and snow. The quirky tidbit? Some traders carried tiny clay pots of sorbet as gifts for foreign nobles, sealed with wax to keep them cool. Think ancient takeout. Historians still argue whether these pots actually preserved sorbet or were just symbolic, like handing out a recipe card. You're eyeing one of those pots now, tucked in Bahram's pack, and you're tempted to peek inside, but his stern glance says don't even think about it. You're passing a roadside station, a mud brick shack where traders swap camels and gulp watered wine. Bahram barters with a Greek merchant, exchanging a jar of quince syrup for a bundle of herbs. You overhear them chatting about sorbet, the Greek guy wide-eyed as Bahram describes mixing snow with fruit. Snow? In summer? He asks, like it's witchcraft. You're grinning because, yeah, it kind of is. The Persians didn't just trade goods, they traded ideas, and sorbet was a hit, spreading to places like Athens and Alexandria. You're imagining some Greek philosopher scooping sorbet while debating the meaning of life, and it's a hilarious mental picture. The trail's getting busier now, with caravans converging from all directions. You see traders from Bactria with dried apricots, Egyptians with honey, even a few Scythians with furs that look wildly out of place in this heat. The sorbet recipe evolves with each trade. Bactrians add apricot paste. Egyptians swap honey for date syrup. You ask Bahram if it still counts as Persian sorbet. He shrugs. Call it what you want, it's cold and sweet. You laugh, because he's got a point. Food doesn't care about borders, and neither do these traders. The sun's nearly gone now, painting the sky in purples and golds. You're sitting by a campfire, the crackle blending with the soft clink of camel bells. Bahram offers you a dried fig, and you chew it slowly, imagining it crushed into sorbet. The thought's so vivid you can almost taste the icy tang, like that pomegranate mix from the palace kitchens. You're starting to feel the weight of the day, your eyelids drooping as the fire's warmth wraps around you. It's the perfect sleep-inducing combo-gentle sounds, a cool breeze, and the hum of a story that's carrying you across empires. You ask Bahram how far the sorbet idea spread. He gestures vaguely west. Greece, maybe Rome. They'll steal it and call it theirs. You snort, because some things never change. The fire pops, sending sparks into the night, and you're sinking deeper into this world. The traders' voices fade to a murmur, like a distant lullaby. You're thinking about those snow haulers from the mountains, the yakchal keepers. The orchard workers show their work ended up here, in jars bouncing on camelback. It's a chain of effort, all for a dessert that feels like a dream in this desert heat. As you lean back against a pack, the stars are coming out, sharp and bright. Bahram's telling a story about a trader who swapped a sorbet recipe for a horse, only to find the horse was lame. "Worst deal I ever saw," he says, shaking his head. You laugh softly, your mind drifting to the next stop on this journey. The sorbet's out there now, moving beyond Persia, but you're curious about the people who carried the snow itself, those mountain merchants risking it all. For now, though, the fire's glow and the desert's quiet are pulling you under, one sleepy breath at a time. You're high in the Alborz Mountains again, but this time, the wind's sharper, biting at your cheeks, as you trail a group of snow merchants on their risky trek. It's 500 BCE, and the rocky path is a jagged scar cutting through the peaks, barely wide enough for the mules they're leading. You're clutching a wool cloak, your breath puffing in the chilly air, and you're wondering how these guys don't just call it quits. They're hauling snow destined to become that fruit sorbet you've been chasing down slopes that make your stomach lurch. Your guide, a grizzled merchant named Darius, squints at the trail ahead, his face etched with lines from years of this grind. "One wrong step," he mutters, "and it's you or the snow that's gone." You laugh nervously, because you're not surviving a tumble down this cliff. The merchants move like they were born on these rocks, their sandals gripping the stone with a confidence you definitely don't have. Each mule carries straw-lined baskets packed with snow, the same kind you saw harvested way back at the start. The baskets creak with every step, and you notice tiny drips of meltwater staining the path. Time's the enemy here. If the snow turns to slush before it reaches the valley, it's worthless. You're watching Darius tie down a loose basket, his hands quick despite the cold. You ask how often they lose a load. He smirks. "Less than we lose mules." You're not sure if he's joking, and the glint in his eye doesn't help. Here's the mainstream fact. Snow transport was a vital trade in the Achaemenid Empire, with merchants supplying yak chows across Persia to support royal feasts and medicinal needs. The quirky tidbit: some merchants claimed they could taste the quality of snow, swearing high-altitude batches made better sorbet because they were purer, a marketing ploy. Probably, but it worked on gullible nobles. Historians still argue whether these treks were run by independent traders or state-controlled guilds, with evidence leaning toward a mix of both. You're side-eyeing Darius now, wondering if he's one of those snow tasters. He catches your look and snorts. "I taste profit, not ice." You're picking your way down a steep incline, your heart pounding every time a pebble skitters off the edge. The mules plod on, unfazed, but you're gripping a rock for dear life. The view's stunning snow-dusted peaks against a sky so blue it hurts, but you're too busy not dying to enjoy it. You can't help but joke, "Ever think of just eating the snow and calling it a day?" Darius laughs, a raspy sound that echoes off the cliffs. "Tried it once. Gave me a headache." You grin, picturing him wincing over a brain freeze, and it's a reminder that these guys were human, not just cogs in the sorbet machine. The trail levels out briefly, and you pause to catch your breath. The air smells of pine and frost, crisp enough to wake you up, but soothing in its own way. You notice the merchants chanting softly, a rhythmic cadence to keep their steps in sync. It's hypnotic, blending with the clink of mule bells and the crunch of gravel. You're feeling that sleepy pull again, the kind that makes your eyelids heavy and your thoughts soft. This journey's hard, but there's a strange calm in its repetition, like the hum of a fan lulling you to sleep back home. Darius points to a narrow pass ahead, where the trail hugs a sheer drop. "That's the bad part," he says, and you're like, "This wasn't bad?" He ignores your sarcasm, explaining that bandits sometimes hit this stretch, eyeing the snow like it's gold. You're stunned people stealing snow? But then you remember how rare and precious it is for sorbet, worth risking a knife fight. You ask if he's ever fought off an attack. "Once," he says, patting a dagger at his belt. "They ran when I threw snow in their eyes." You laugh, because that's the most Persian solution you've heard yet. As you near the pass, the wind picks up, howling through the rocks like a warning. You're shivering now, but the merchants don't slow. They've got a deadline: get this snow to the valley before it melts. where couriers will race it to Persepolis. You're thinking back to the Yakchal, that dome where the snow's stored, and the orchards bursting with fruit. It's all connected, a chain of sweat and skill that ends in a dessert you're dying to taste. You're starting to respect these merchants, their quiet grit and dry humor. They're not just hauling snow, they're carrying a piece of the empire's pride. The pass is behind you now, and the trail widens, sloping gently toward the valley. The sun's higher, warming your face, and you're feeling the strain in your legs. Darius offers you a sip from his water skin, and it's warm but refreshing. You're sinking deeper into this world, the sounds and smells wrapping around you like a blanket. The snow's still dripping, but most of it's intact, a small victory. You're curious about what happens when it reaches the palace, how it's served at those lavish feasts you've heard about. For now, though, you're content to follow the mules, their bells fading into a soft, sleepy rhythm. You're seated on a plush cushion in a grand banquet hall in Persepolis, the air heavy with the scent of roasted lamb, saffron, and something sweet fruit sorbet, the star of tonight's feast. It's 500 BCE, and the hall is a riot of color. Tapestries of lions and stars hang on the walls, and golden lamps cast a warm glow over tables laden with food. You're surrounded by nobles in flowing robes, their laughter mingling with the soft strum of a lyre. The sorbet, that chilled miracle you've been tracking from mountain to kitchen, is about to make its grand entrance. Your host, a jovial courtier named Cyrus, leans over with a grin. "Wait till you try this," he says, his eyes glinting. It's like kissing a cloud. You're not sure if he's overselling it, but your mouth's already watering. The servers glide in, carrying clay cups etched with lotus flowers, each holding a glistening scoop of sorbet. The ruby-red pomegranate version catches the light, and you swear it sparkles. You're handed a cup, and the cold seeps through the clay, a shock in this warm hall. The nobles around you are murmuring, their excitement palpable, and you realize this isn't just dessert, it's a spectacle, a flex of the king's power to serve snow in the desert. You take a tentative scoop, and the tart sweet burst hits your tongue like a revelation. You're grinning like an idiot, and Cyrus laughs. "Told you," he says. "Better than your modern ice cream, eh?" You roll your eyes, but he's not wrong. Here's the mainstream fact. Persian royal banquets, known as basm, were extravagant affairs, often hosting hundreds of guests and showcasing dishes like sorbet to flaunt wealth and ingenuity. The quirky tidbit? Some nobles insisted on eating sorbet with tiny silver spoons shaped like birds, believing it enhanced the flavor-pure decadence, but you kind of want one. Historians still argue whether sorbet was served as a palate cleanser between courses or as a dessert to close the meal, with evidence suggesting both. You're leaning toward dessert, because this stuff feels like a grand finale. You're watching the room now, the way the nobles savor each bite, their chatter slowing as they sink into the sorbet's chill. The lyre player switches to a softer tune, and the hall's noise dips into a soothing hum, clinking cups, murmured praise, the rustle of silk. It's the kind of ambience that could lull you to sleep, and you're feeling that familiar heaviness, like your body's ready to drift. You take another scoop, the quince notes hitting this time, floral and honeyed. You're starting to get why this was a big deal. In a world without freezers, this is pure magic. Cyrus nudges you, pointing to a noble who spilled sorbet on his beard. "Happens every time," he whispers. You stifle a laugh. picturing the guy trying to play it cool while dabbing at the stain. The scene so human, so relatable, it makes the centuries melt away. You ask Cyrus how often they get to eat this. Only when the king's feeling generous, he says. Or when he wants to impress someone. He nods toward a group of foreign envoys, their eyes wide as they taste the sorbet. You're betting they'll be begging for the recipe by morning. The banquet's pace slows, and you're sinking deeper into the moment. The sorbet's gone now, your cup empty, but the taste lingers sweet, with a hint of rosewater that's probably thanks to that kitchen trick you saw. You're thinking back to the orchard, the yak chow, the merchants braving the mountain soul, that effort for this fleeting moment of bliss. You ask Cyrus if it's worth it. He shrugs, licking his spoon. For this? I'd climb the mountains myself. You laugh, because you're not sure you'd go that far, but you get the obsession. The hall's growing quieter, the lamps dimming as servants clear the tables. You're noticing the details now, the cool marble under your feet, the faint breeze from an open window, the way the lyre's notes seem to float. It's hypnotic, pulling you toward that sleepy edge where the world feels soft and distant. You're imagining the sorbet's journey, how it went from a snowy peak to this gilded hall, and it's almost too much to hold in your head. Cyrus offers you a grape from a nearby platter, and you pop it in your mouth, its warmth a contrast to the sorbet's chill. As the feast winds down, you're feeling the weight of the night, your body sinking into the cushion. The nobles are starting to leave, their voices fading to a murmur. You're curious about what else sorbet meant to these people beyond taste, beyond status. Was there something deeper, something tied to their beliefs? For now, though, you're content to sit here, the memory of that icy bite lingering, pulling you gently towards sleep. You're still in Persepolis, but now you're wandering through a quiet courtyard at dusk, the air cooling as the sun dips below the horizon. It's 500 BCE, and the faint scent of jasmine mixes with the lingering sweetness of sorbet from the banquet you just left. You're here to dig into the deeper meaning of this frozen treat, the mystical beliefs that made it more than just a dessert in ancient Persia. The courtyard is serene, with a small fountain gurgling softly and stone benches carved with lotus patterns. Your guide, a priestess named Anahita, walks beside you, her white robes catching the last light. She's calm, almost too calm, like she knows secrets you'll never quite grasp. Sorbet, she says softly, is a gift from the divine. You raise an eyebrow because you're pretty sure it's just snow and fruit, but her tone makes you curious. Anahita leads you to a small shrine, a stone altar draped with cloth and scattered with rose petals. She explains that in Zoroastrianism, the dominant faith of the Achaemenid Empire, purity and balance were everything. Snow, plucked from the pristine peaks of the Alborz, was seen as a symbol of Ahura Mazda's creation clean, untouched, almost holy. You're picturing those snow harvesters you met, praying before their climb, and it's starting to click. The fruit, grown in the paradise gardens you walked through, represented the earth's bounty. Mixing them into sorbet wasn't just culinary, it was a ritual, a way to honor the harmony of nature. You're feeling a bit out of your depth, like you've stumbled into a theology class, but Anahita's voice is so soothing, it's hard to care. Here's the mainstream fact. Zoroastrianism shaped Persian culture, emphasizing the duality of good and evil, with rituals often tied to natural elements like fire, water, and yes, snow. The quirky tidbit? Some priests believed eating sorbet during festivals purified the body, claiming its chill cleansed the inner heat of worldly desires, basically dessert as spiritual detox. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread belief or just a quirky idea among temple elites, with some texts hinting at sorbet being served during solstice celebrations. You're giving Anahita a skeptical look, and she smiles. "You doubt," she says, "but taste the sorbet and tell me it's not divine." You chuckle, because she's got a point that pomegranate slush was heavenly. You're sitting on a bench now, the stone cool against your legs. Anahita gestures to the sky, where stars are starting to prick through the twilight. She tells you that sorbet was sometimes offered at altars, a small cup left to melt as a gift to the gods. You're imagining a priest setting out a clay cup of quince sorbet, the ice glistening under moonlight, and it's such a vivid image you almost forget the desert heat. You ask if they really thought the gods ate it. Anahita shrugs, her eyes twinkling. Maybe they just liked the smell. You laugh, because that's the most relatable divine preference you've heard. The courtyard's quiet is wrapping around you, broken only by the fountain's soft splash and the distant hum of the city winding down. It's the kind of soundscape that could lull you to sleep, and you're feeling that familiar heaviness in your limbs, like the world's slowing down. Anahita's talking about balance now, how the cold of snow and the warmth of fruit mirrored the Zoroastrian view of life. You're nodding, but your mind's drifting to the banquet, the yakchal, the orchard zall, the steps that brought sorbet to this sacred moment. It's wild to think something so simple carried so much meaning. You notice a small clay cup on the altar, empty but stained red, probably from pomegranate sorbet. You ask Anahita if she's ever tried it herself. "Once," she admits, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I was young. It felt like stealing starlight." You grin, because the image of a priestess sneaking a taste is too good. You're starting to see sorbet as more than a treat. It's a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a way to taste the cosmos in a single bite. You're not sure you buy the spiritual angle, but you're feeling the magic of this place, the way it pulls you into a softer, sleepier state. The stars are brighter now, and the courtyard feels like a cocoon, shielding you from the world. Anahita's voice is fading to a murmur, her words blending with the fountain's rhythm. You're thinking about the snow merchants, risking cliffs for this divine ingredient, and the cooks who stirred it with reverence. It's all connected, a thread running through the empire, from mountain to altar. You're sinking deeper, your eyelids heavy, the cool air brushing your skin like a lullaby. You're curious about how they kept this sorbet making alive, the engineering that made it possible year after year. For now, though, you're content to sit here, letting Anahita's words and the night's calm carry you closer to sleep. You're standing in the shadow of a massive yakchal, its mud-brick dome rising like a silent giant against the desert sky of Persepolis. It's 500 BCE, and the air is thick with heat, but just being near this ice storage house sends a shiver down your spine. You're here to marvel at the architectural wizardry that kept snow frozen for months, making fruit sorbet possible in a land where summer could melt your sandals. Your guide, an engineer named Farhad, is tapping the thick walls with a calloused hand, his face lit with pride. "This," he says, "is how we cheat the sun." You're squinting at the structure, half expecting it to hum like a modern fridge, but it's just stone, straw, and sheer ingenuity. The yakchal's design is deceptively simple: a deep underground pit, thick walls, and a domed roof that traps cold air like a vault. You're circling it now, your sandals crunching on gravel, and you notice the same water trench you saw before, glinting in the sunlight. Farhad explains that the trench isn't just for show, it's part of an evaporative cooling system. Water seeps into the walls, evaporates, and pulls heat away, keeping the ice inside as solid as the day it arrived. You're impressed, but you can't resist a jab. So, no one's ever turned this into a giant slip and slide? Farhad laughs, shaking his head. Not unless they want to face the king's wrath. Here's the mainstream fact. Yakhchals were among the world's earliest refrigeration systems, with some surviving examples in modern Iran still functional after centuries. The quirky tidbit: engineers sometimes coated the inner walls with a mix of clay, sand, and goat hair called sarujto, make them waterproof and extra insulating, like ancient gorilla glue for ice. Historians still argue whether the Yakhchal's design was purely Persian or evolved from earlier desert cultures, with some pointing to similar structures in ancient Mesopotamia. You're running your hand along the wall now, feeling its cool, rough texture, and you're half tempted to ask Farhad for a sample of that goat hair plaster just to see it. You follow him to the entrance, a low archway leading into darkness. The air inside hits you like a cold slap, and you're blinking to adjust to the dim light. The pit below is stacked with ice blocks, layered with straw like a frozen lasagna. You're picturing the snow from those mountain treks, packed tight and stored here for months. Farhad points to a ventilation shaft high in the dome, letting in just enough air to keep things stable. Too much breeze, and it melts, he says. Too little, and it rots. You're nodding, but you're privately wondering how they figured this out without a thermometer. Trial and error, probably, with a few grumpy kings eating slushy sorbet along the way. The process is meticulous. Workers haul snow from the mountains, remember those merchants dodging bandits, and pack it into the pit at night when it's cooler. Farhad's team checks the ice daily, draining meltwater through a sloped floor to keep the rest solid. You're watching a worker shovel straw over a fresh layer, his movements slow and deliberate, like he's tucking the ice in for a long nap. It's oddly soothing, the repetitive scrape of the shovel blending with the faint drip of water. You're feeling that sleepy pull again, your body sinking into the rhythm of this ancient fridge. You ask Farhad if they ever lose a batch. Sometimes, he admits, rubbing his neck. Last year, a crack in the wall let heat in, ruined a month's worth. You wince, imagining the cooks' faces when they got watery snow for their sorbet. You can't help but joke, bet the king wasn't thrilled with warm juice. Farhad grins. He sent us to fix it in the hottest month. You laugh, picturing him sweating buckets to patch a yakhchal while dreaming of the sorbet he'd never taste. The yakhchal's interior is a world of its own, cool and quiet, with a faint, musty smell of straw and earth. You're noticing the details now, the way the dome's curves catch the light, the faint echo of your footsteps. It's like stepping into a cave, but one built to defy the desert. You're thinking back to the banquet, how that sorbet sparkled in its clay cup, and you're amazed at the effort behind it. This isn't just engineering, it's obsession, a refusal to let the sun win. You're starting to feel a strange respect for these yakhchal keepers, their quiet battle against nature. As you step back into the sunlight, the heat hits like a wave, but you're carrying a bit of that coolness with you. Farhad's already barking orders at his crew, his voice fading as you wander toward the city. The yakhchal looms behind you, a testament to what people can do when they're determined to eat dessert in a furnace. You're curious about how this sorbet story ends, how it ripples into the future, but for now, You're content to let the memory of that cold air linger, pulling you gently towards sleep. You're sprawled under a sprawling fig tree in a tranquil garden just beyond the walls of Persepolis, the air thick with the hum of cicadas and the warm, syrupy scent of overripe fruit. It's 500 BCE, but your mind's starting to wander, stretching across centuries to trace the legacy of that fruit sorbet you've been chasing from the snowy peaks of the Alborz, through orchards and yakchals, to the banquet halls where it dazzled kings. The sun's sinking, painting the sky in lazy swirls of orange and pink, and you're cradling a clay cup of watered wine, its coolness a faint echo of the sorbet's icy bite. Your guide, a storyteller named Zari, sits cross-legged on the grass, her voice as smooth as the evening breeze. "This dessert," she says, her eyes glinting, "outlived empires." You lean back, ready to follow the thread of sorbet's journey, from ancient Persia to the frozen treats in your modern world. Zari's tales pull you through time like a gentle current. You're picturing merchants like Bahram, the one you met on the Royal Road, carrying jars of fruit syrup, and stories of snow-chilled delights to distant lands. By the time the recipe reached Alexandria, it had morphed snow was swapped for crushed ice, pomegranates for citrus, honey for date syrup. You're imagining an Egyptian noble at a banquet, spooning a lemony proto-sorbet, his linen robe stained with a stray drop, probably boasting to his guests about this exotic Persian treat. The Greeks got their hands on it next, because of course they did, always borrowing ideas and slapping their own names on them. Zari smirks when you mention it. "They called it chilled nectar," she says, "like that makes it theirs." You laugh, because it's such a Greek move, and you're picturing some philosopher in Athens scooping sorbet while debating the cosmos, his toga a mess. Here's the mainstream fact. Persia's cooling techniques, like yakchals and evaporative systems, spread through trade routes, influencing refrigeration from the Mediterranean to Central Asia, laying the groundwork for frozen desserts across cultures. The quirky tidbit? Medieval Arabs, inspired by Persian sorbet, developed sharbat, a sweetened fruit drink chilled with snow from Mount Lebanon, which directly inspired modern sherbet and sorbetsome recipes, even called for rose petals, a nod to those floral notes you tasted in the palace kitchens. Historians still argue whether this evolution happened through Arab traders or crusaders returning from the Middle East, with both sides citing scattered texts and recipes. You're leaning toward the traders, because crusaders seem more likely to spill their sorbet than spread its gospel. You're sinking deeper into the grass now, the cicadas hum, weaving into Zari's voice, a rhythm so soothing it's like your favorite sleep playlist. She's telling you how sorbet's legacy lives on in modern desserts, Italian gelato, French sorbet, even those neon blue slushies you grab at gas stations. You're thinking back to that pomegranate sorbet at the banquet, its tart zing and rosewater kick, and you realize it's not so far from the mango sorbet you love on a hot summer day. The Persians didn't just invent a dessert, they sparked a global craving for frozen sweetness, a way to beat the heat that's still alive in every ice cream truck's jingle. You ask Zari if she thinks the Persians would approve of our modern takes. She tilts her head, grinning. They'd demand more saffron, less blue dye. You snort, because, yeah, a neon slushie probably wouldn't cut it in Persepolis. The garden's growing dim, the stars blinking into view one by one. You're feeling that sleepy weight, your body melting into the earth, the wine's warmth spreading through you like a hug. Zari's voice slows, her stories softening into tales of how Persian ingenuity shaped more than just food. Those yakchals inspired Arab cooling towers, which trickled into European designs centuries later. The orchards you walked through, with their clever irrigation, influenced gardens from Spain to India. Even the idea of chilling food for pleasure sorbets changed how people saw luxury, turning a simple treat into a symbol of mastery over nature. You're starting to see the bigger picture. A dessert that started with snow and fruit became a quiet revolution, rippling through time. You're picturing the whole journey now, the snow merchants dodging cliffs, the orchard keepers tending pomegranate trees, the cooks stirring bronze bowls, the priests offering sorbet to the gods. It's a chain of human effort, each link a story of sweat and pride. You ask Zari if she's ever tasted it herself. Once, she says, her voice low, at a festival. It felt like eating starlight. You smile, because that's exactly how it felt at the banquet, that fleeting chill that made the desert feel conquerable. You're wondering if you'd have the patience to climb mountains for a dessert, and you decide probably not, you'd just hit up a freezer aisle instead. The wine's gone now, your cup empty, but the taste of the garden lingers: fig, dust, a hint of jasmine. The cicadas are quieter, their song blending with the rustle of leaves and Zari's fading words. You're sinking deeper, your eyelids heavy, the world softening around you. It's comforting to think that something as simple as sorbet could endure, connecting you to people who lived under these same stars. You're imagining a modern ice cream shop, its hum of freezers like a distant cousin of the yakchal, dishing out flavors the Persians would have loved: pomegranate, quince, maybe a saffron swirl. The thought's so cozy it's pulling you under, your breath slowing, the garden fading into a dreamy haze. And now, as the stars blanket the garden, the world grows softer, quieter, like a sigh. The cicada's hum fades to a whisper, the breeze carrying the last traces of fruit and earth. Your breath slows, each exhale pulling you deeper into calm, the weight of the day dissolving. The journey's dawns now to sorbet, mountains to modern freezer sand. You can let it slip away. Picture that ruby-red sorbet one last time, its chill melting into warmth, a memory folding into dreams. The garden fades, leaving just you and the stars, their light soft, distant, eternal. Let your thoughts drift. Let the story settle like dust. You're safe here, wrapped in history's gentle hum. Sleep's waiting, close and kind. Sweet dreams.